Now let's turn to another summit that we're tracking for you. And that's because tomorrow will be the beginning of the COP26 summit, and 38 of the world's chief scientists and presidents of the national science academies did sign a letter outlining the drastic steps the world needs to take to combat a warming planet. Again, this is ahead of COP26. Now, one signatory on the letter was the chief science advisor for Canada, Dr. Mona Nemer. She joins us right now in Montreal with more on what the world's chief scientists are calling for and why long-term evidence-based scientific strategies need to be a part of the solution. So, Dr. Nemer, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So you've signed on to this letter calling for action to hold temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Also the goal achieving net zero, which Canada's aiming for by 2050. Is that even possible given the timeline?
Well, it's certainly an ambitious, plan, but it is achievable to achieve net zero by 2050. Many countries have signed on such plans. It will, however, require a very determined, strategic and collaborative approach to achieving this. And this is where we are going to have to rely on a lot of science in order to help us find new solutions, but also to help the population in general, embrace the changes that will be required.
Okay, so you say strategic, collaborative approaches. What do you mean by that? What are you hoping to achieve here or see here?
Well, there are a number of things that can already be done in terms of achieving low emissions. We do have some solutions. We can think of electric vehicle. We can think about renewable energies, and we need to scale them. Sure that everyone in the population in Canada and across the world is able to come along in this, transformative adventure. Now, at the same time, to achieve the more ambitious goals, we don't have the solutions yet. We are going to need to rely on a lot of science and a lot of development to achieve this. But if the pandemic has taught us any lesson, it's that when we put our minds to a solution for a complex problem, we can achieve it. But we can achieve it by governments working hand in hand with many sectors, including civil societies, including scientists, but also including the private sector.
Now, it's interesting because you also say that there needs to be a transformation of attitudes and expectations among people worldwide. And I'm wondering how you foster that, though, because, you mentioned electric cars, but in this country alone, I think of people who can't afford electric cars, who think switching their heating source is too expensive, not to mention the people who rely on the oil and gas sector for work. So how do you change those attitudes when, for many, this is still a bread and butter issue of affordability and livelihoods?
Absolutely. And, this is, again, where working from evidence is extremely important, because evidence does show us that the ones of the population that are going to be the least able to transition are the most vulnerable and are the ones that we need to help most. So this is where policy dimensions and regulatory issues come in play. But in many cases, I think our biggest issue is really inertia on the parts of governments, of the industry, and people themselves. And there's a lot of behavioral science and economic science that can weigh in there, that can help us. And needless to say that communicating in transparent and clear fashion, a complex, message and a lot of intangibles is going to be extremely important.
Well, that does make me think about our own government here. Has Ottawa done enough to bring people along to make the kinds of investments that would secure a greener future? Because I still think, for example, there are people out there that still view the carbon tax as achieving nothing more than making gas more expensive at the pumps.
Well, I'm not going to comment on specific policies. I'll just say that, the science is clear, and climate change will have dramatic effects on people, whether it's in terms of health and food security, whether in terms of just like their livelihood, the houses where they're living. So we need to approach this in a I guess with more pragmatism and less politicking. The last thing that we need is for, like in other countries where they saw the pandemic as a political issue. I think they've fared far worse than others. So, we've started to do things in this country. We need to accelerate the pace. There's, no question that, governments in general, because starting with municipal, provincial, as well as federal government, there have been steps taken, but the steps need to be accelerated given the urgency and of inaction or of slow pace of action.
So what would you like to see then concretely come out of COP26 in Glasgow?
Well, I'd like to see a real plan for governments to work together to facilitate collaborations, whether it's in capturing, facilitating research, facilitating piloting certain solutions, scaling them up, but also making sure that not only the developing world, but also developed countries are coming along in terms of not only buying the solution that perhaps they can't afford to buy, but developing the solutions themselves and integrating both nature solutions and technological solutions as we go forward.
Okay, Dr. Mona Nemer, thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.